I'm Alex.
Hey, I'm Parv, and this
Is trying to product.
we are two Silicon Valley product managers, and we know how messy it can be.
So we're here to talk about the ups and downs of being a PM. It's not always straightforward, but we're here to figure it out together.
So we've talked about this offline, or whatever, outside the podcast a lot. But any new AI tools that you've been using recently?
I think,
Not captions, because that I don't think that counts.
yeah, I guess
that counts as AI, but not relevant.
for PM stuff in general.
Yeah.
I think this past year, it's kind of been rotating depending on who's kind of out ahead. I think for a little bit, I was actually using Claude, the Anthropic model, which was really good for like a couple months there until ChatGPT 4.0 came out. And then they kind of took back the mantle. So I think it really depends on what you're trying to do. I think for like, itineraries or writing specs, writing requirements, like Claude Opus, I think is the best model. Yeah. Was really good. I mean, it's still really good. It's just that 4.0 is a lot faster. So it depends on what you want. I think I still go back to Claude sometimes, but I love the speed. The speed of 4.0 is just like so nice because I used to like work out while prompting because it would literally take 5 minutes to like finish writing the requirements. So now with 4.0, I can just sit there and it's like 10 seconds and it just pumps it out for me. But yeah, I think ChatGPT is still the reigning champion. I think it does trade back and forth depending, but and Anthropic has done a great job, I think, catching up. But yeah, ChatGPT is still the best.
Are there so these are all chat-based interaction models, right? I mean, of course, you have like multimodal within them, but is there any specific AI product that you use these days, like outside of just ChatGPT or Claude? I'm curious. Like for example, we were talking about captions. That's something popular for like video editing and content creation in some ways, like similarly like Opus clips and Riverside and all of that. But non ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude AI product, like a non LLM pro. I mean, they all have like
Some LLM
LLM, yeah. But
components.
I'm
I
curious.
guess not really for product
Oh, interesting.
work.
Okay.
I think because the multimodal thing, like I was like building an app for fun the other day, and I was kind of hitting a wall with the code. So I was like, it's a Swift app for iOS, and so I was just like copy and pasting the code in, and I was like, prompting it, and I couldn't get it to do a design I wanted. So I just quickly mocked up the design in Figma. I think Figma AI hadn't come out yet. I think it just came out in like the last month or so. This was like maybe back in May, and so I just quickly mocked it up. I said, "Hey, ChatGPT, look at this image of this UI I just made. Mirror it in Xcode for me in Swift," and it did it, and it worked perfectly. So like, I think there's a lot of AI stuff that's good. It's just that for product management, I don't really need it for anything. Is kind of my feeling. It's just because product is also like so writing heavy, right? So if you're writing like a PRD, for instance, like maybe half that PRD can be done by the chatbot as long as you give it the right context. But beyond that, I mean, you can do some UI stuff. It's just not very good. Yeah, I think there's a lot of great stuff for non-product. Like if you want to do travel itineraries, like Gemini is really good because it gives you all the images from Google Images. So like there's a lot of stuff outside of the product world, but I think in product specifically, I'm not.
Okay, let me put it this way: like day to day, as a PM, how do you use AI? Because I know when during your last career stint, you were talking about how you had sort of templatized a lot of your work
Oh yeah.
through AI. And I'm curious, if you could talk about that one. And then second, like, how do you use, like, are you using AI any differently day to day right now as a product person?
Yeah, I think yeah, so like in my like role in my big tech job, like basically it was a lot of growth tests and a lot of conversion rate optimization. Yeah. But the nice thing about e-commerce is that a lot of these conversion rate optimization stuff is already pretty well established, right? Like make the button bigger, make the color, move the button to a different location. So I guess ChatGPT has already been trained on a lot of this. So essentially, if you come up with the optimizations you want to do, yeah, they're not going to be one to one, but you can just add like you can just write a one sentence explanation of what that feature is. So like default to subscription when you land on like this particular page on the website. You can even give it a screenshot. I think at the time, couldn't give it a screenshot, but you could just give it a one sentence description of that test. And then I just had like a prompt that I would just copy and paste, and you just change your hypothesis, and it would just write the entire template for you. So I think at a lot of these companies, there's a template for like how to do a growth test that then gets submitted to, like a council for approval. So you can essentially tell ChatGPT or Claude or any of these at this point to recreate the template for you with the information. So for instance, if it's like, what is the name? What is the hypothesis? What is the problem you're trying to solve? What are the key metrics? Can you please give a summary of what you expect to happen? Can you please, right? This is like the template that you're supposed to fill out. So what you then say is you say, hey, please make a template. And you say like, then you just put in the exact template. And then in the part that's supposed to fill out, then you just say like, this is my hypothesis. This is the page it's on. This is the context you need. Please answer all the questions in here and put it into this point in the template. And so then it just literally fills out the template from like one hypothesis.
Interesting.
So I think also with like, what are they called? Like GPTs, like you can make your own GPT around this.
Yeah.
Which is really nice, right?
Did you
Because you
do
can
that?
give
Did
it
you
all the
make?
not at this time. Now I do it for my own stuff. Like now it's trained on my writing style. You can make a GPT for all the stuff that you want. So yeah, if I wanted to write to my writing style, I just give it all my blog posts. I'm like, okay, write like Alex, and then here's the prompt. And normally I give it like a paragraph of whatever I wanted to write,
Yeah.
or I'll just write my own blog post. And like, can you please proofread this, understanding that you're Alex? So there's a lot of things like that that are kind of maybe more just like tweaks. Like it's really kind of a nice, like 10 hours of filling out all these templates now turned into like an hour of waiting for the thing to kind of go through. I also actually made my own Chrome plugin to bulk submit. So you can basically bulk submit the prompts and then into ChatGPT. So instead of using the API, which I mean you probably should do, but the API I feel like is a little squirrely versus ChatGPT.
Okay.
So it's called Bada Bing, and basically you just pop the prompts in, and then it will just sequentially enter those prompts, and then once the one prompt is done, it'll go to the next one.
Wait, so you build this Chrome extension
Yeah.
for work or just in general use right
So
now?
in general, I mean, now I use it for everything.
But
But
wait, you put in like let's say 3 prompts.
well, like say you're doing a growth test, right?
Okay.
You already wrote out all the growth tests. Maybe it's on like an
Yeah.
Excel sheet or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So instead of like going to ChatGPT and putting in your template and all this stuff,
Yeah.
right? You just put your template in
To the
into the Chrome plugin.
Okay.
You just select it from the dropdown. I think I defaulted to like 10, but you can add every time you prompt using the plugin, it saves it. So you can put your template in and then you just tweak whatever word you need. So say you have an Excel of like 10 growth tests.
Yeah.
You put your prompt that you like, you put the hypothesis for that growth test, and then you just paste the hypothesis in like all 10, each hypothesis individually. And then it comes out with all of the specs.
Output. Okay.
Yeah. And then just read it over. Normally it's like 95% correct.
Okay.
Maybe there's just some contextual issues. But that's been like super useful because growth test requirement stuff is mostly all the same. I think, it's relatively rare you're going to come up with something that's like very brand new and earth shattering. Sometimes you do, but typically ChatGPT can also still fill out like maybe 70 to 80% of what your idea was just from that one sentence explainer. So that's been like such a huge time saver, I think, for me, on like the optimization side. And then also for requirements, I think like it's
Do you
actually
use it for requirements? Like
yes,
for writing requirements?
yes. My gosh, it is so good. It is so good at requirements. So I guess some context is
Wait.
like,
Okay, before you answer that, is this for when you're at your last job or is this with your consultancy
both.
gigs right now? Both. Okay. Okay. I
Yeah,
just want to make sure.
I think yeah, I think with like the tech job, like of course there's kind of unique things like legal stuff. Like there's like kind of like 3 or 4 categories that are just like very unique that you kind of learn from all the cuts and bruises that you acquire in that role. Like legal has is going to have these issues, so make sure to put legal requirements in. Make sure to capture the data. Like there's some things you know, but the rest of the stuff is pretty much all kind of been done before. I think for what, especially for like websites, I think a lot of these optimizations, like it's relatively rare you have a new one. Like I said, so it'll write maybe 70 to 80% of those requirements. You just have to make sure to put the organizational ones in. So like the legal stuff, is kind of an issue, or the accessibility stuff that is often an issue. These kind of unique things to that organization.
How do you solve for multi-platform project company contextual awareness in writing requirements? Like you could say, or maybe it's not used at that level, right? Like I can imagine you're saying, okay, hey, I'm going to create a forget my password feature. Here are a couple of things that are specific to my PRDs for my company. Fill the PRD out, write the requirements for a my forget password feature.
Yeah.
Is that the scale or level that you're talking about, or
Yeah.
something?
No, no.
Okay,
I think
so
it's
pure like user requirements for a very well defined
yeah.
flow.
You have to define it. Pretty like if you try to have it be too creative, it just kind of goes off the deep
Got it.
end.
Okay, so
But I
more.
but I think
Yeah, go
for
ahead.
big tech, it's actually easier because it knows the context. Like you can just say, "Hey, I work for Mozilla. I'm making a new
Browser fix
feature
feature. Yeah.
for Firefox. Like this is what I like. I
Okay.
forgot that password feature. It's
Yeah.
like a cookieless browsing feature. Like, can you please help me like write initial requirements? Like it already knows what Mozilla is. Already knows what Firefox is. Already knows what the latest release was, and has already read the release notes, or it's going to look it up for you if you ask it to, and have that context. So it's actually way easier for well-established companies. For startups, it's a lot more difficult. A lot of times, just because it doesn't have the context, you have to make sure to provide as much context as possible, which is not maybe it normally takes a lot more time in that case.
Interesting. I tried using this, and I'll talk about the use cases I've used it for. But I tried using it for like, here's a thing I want to build at my company. Like, give me a PRD. Of course, I gave it some of my context. I gave it, let's say, a template that I use, and I was what I was trying to get out of it was like, a unique perspective, or like, okay, how would I solve this problem? Like, my problem is, let's say, you know, we want to grow users by X%. I'm trying to think about something that will help them solve this particular problem of like logging data. And this is like a future idea. Come up with a PRD for this. And it came out with such a cookie cutter response. But I think the difference was that I wasn't taking a very well defined scoped flow and getting requirements. I was trying to get it to do like a broader strategy or initiative level thinking, which I think that it just was hot. I walked
Yeah.
off it. I was like, okay, this is bullshit. I'm not going to use
No,
this.
that's how I started. I was like, "Hey, can you make a PRD for this feature?" And it just like went off the deep end. I can't do it.
Yeah.
But like, say a PRD has like maybe like five core components, right? You have, of course, the requirements, bread and butter, but you also have the context, business context, why you're doing this, the user stories. You have the problem you're trying to solve. You have like all of these kind of components. So what I found is like basically filling in at least one line or maybe a short paragraph on each of those sections, and then saying, "Hey, can you make this more robust?" Or ask me what questions you need is really the key. So like, ask me what questions you need in order to fill out this to the
Yeah.
best of your abilities. And then it comes out, it's going to ask you a lot of questions, like
Yeah.
20
Yeah. Yeah.
questions. But if you answer those questions, it's going to do like a 90, maybe 80 to
Got it.
90%
But
job.
it's still, I still wouldn't say that it's that useful for innovation slash
Oh no.
strategy. Like I can't
Yeah.
walk into like a chat GPT session and say, okay, I want to probably increase revenue. Like, this is my product, this is my company. What should I do? And at that point, I think it will come up with pretty generic stuff. And that's because there's just so much that you need to know about the product. And then And I was thinking, but then on the other side also, when you think about like requirements and writing requirements, there's still a part of all of this which is like I need to know how my platforms are integrated. I need to know how my infrastructure is set up. What are my constraints technically and architecturally in the system that will define how certain systems will play out in terms of requirements, technical requirements. I just don't think like I haven't been able to do that well with ChatGPT or Claude in any way, unless I find all the relevant technical documents associated with anything that this feature is going to touch and try and feed that as a resource to my GPT session where I'm like, okay, I'm going to find all these technical docs and I'll ask ChatGPT to use these technical docs as constraints and then come up with all the technical requirements for this like new platform enhancement. Even then, it does a good job. So but even then it still is like missing a lot of the interdependencies that you need to solve for. But I did realize that it did a better job than if I didn't give it any of those like technical company documents. But of course, but then you have like at that time I was working with an enterprise version and I had like really limited the data set because I wanted to make sure that there's no PHI or like not PHI, sorry, there's no IP or anything from a business perspective that goes in. And so I like it was very filtered down documentation, very generic in that sense. I was like very limited data because of all those constraints. But it did do a better job when it had some understanding of the technical system, like even a flow chart, for example.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's why like it really depends on how creative you want it to be. Like if it's just like, hey, can you make this? Can you write the specs for like something very specific that's like been done 1,000 times? It's fine. It does like yeah, 80 to 90%. But if it's something like that needs a lot of business context, it just can't. Even with providing the context, I haven't seen it be able to do any of that. Like I was working on like one legal project with like some EU regulation that was coming out, and like it has no context on that. I can give it the entire like legalese text on how to do this, but there's no context on how to produce a product around these regulations to fit within it. So even if you gave it the whole regulation, like the whole law, it's still not going to help you. Like it's not going to really write the requirements that you need. So I think yeah, it works in a very defined kind of area. E-commerce conversion rate optimization, it does a great job. Like regulate new regulations and trying to build around that. Not as good a job, but again, you can answer the questions. So just ask it what questions to ask you, and that often will get you in a really good place. But I think actually the best feature is not even like any like
Um,
actually writing the requirements. It's that when you're faced with a blank requirements document
oh,
that's due tomorrow that you've been
yes,
procrastinating on
yes.
for like 3 weeks and everyone's asking you for, and you're like, okay, let me just have it fill this out and I'll just edit it basically. I think that's like the best thing.
Yeah, I think the blank page problem, the cold start issue, I think that you're so right. Like, even if it's shit, like the shitty first
Yep.
draft, which is the biggest hurdle in any work project, I feel like ChatGPT has helped so much, or any of these models, or any of these platforms have helped so much with just getting past the shitty first draft. Like, just that, give me something. And then maybe I change it 100%, but still, it's just so much easier to work with something like that as a
Mhm.
basis than starting from scratch or like a
Yeah.
blank page. So that's a very good point that you bring up. For me, one of the things that I've loved using any of these platforms has been just analysis, like qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis, in the sense that we have NPS comments, not NPS comments. It's like any feedback that you've received. You can anonymize that data, and then you can just like work with your enterprise GPT provider to sort of, hey, what are the themes and categories? Like, what are the bugs or issues that are coming up again and again that we should be solving for? Or like, what are the themes of within like technical experience, design? Like, try and find like the insights from all this like qualitative data. And I think that has been pretty fun to just like take a lot of it and try and find this out. Like, it looked at all my App Store reviews and it can figure out like what's needed and what's not. Like, and there are products like Craftful, etc., that do a lot of that right now. And it's just so crazy that I can't even imagine how I would have done that before. Because I spent time like looking through each one of them one by one. But I just now I can like bulk export and I can get a sense of like with an emotional sentiment analysis on how negative or how positive this feedback is, and then what are the themes, how many times it's occurred in our entire history, and like what bubbles up as like a high priority from all that analysis. Like that's been so good as a day-to-day use case.
It's like all like literally UX professional would go through literally thousands
But
of
they were also conducting the research, right? Like,
no, this is like the automated like, hey, like how's
oh,
your
okay,
experience on the
got it,
website?
got it, got it.
So you get like thousands of
Yeah,
responses, and then they would manually go through all of those, bubble up the ones that are most
yeah,
they think is the most valuable, and then like categorize everything, and then plot it for you, and then produce this whole like slide deck with all the data.
yeah.
And yeah, now you're saying like ChatGPT can do that in like probably 30 seconds.
The other is also actually it's pretty good with quantitative stuff. Like, you can submit like Excel sheets with some data and actually have it do like financial modeling, help you out with financial modeling, help you out with forecasting, help you out with like just general statistical analysis of that data to get a sense of like what you should be doing.
Yeah.
Um, Recently, I had a coworker. I love this example that he gave. He just looked at how many users we have and how many sessions we have, and we were trying to measure like we wanted to do an A/B test, and he just gave ChatGPT a few parameters and said, okay, this is the number of sessions, this is the number of um, you know like current conversion rate. I want to test something out. How long should I run the A/B test? And what should be a conversion rate that I should look for that would be like a significant indicator of like success or not? And it just gave every parameter that we needed to think about for an A/B test and said like, okay, because you have these many sessions running on average, you need to run it for these many days, and a delta of these percentage points between your current and baseline and future is what you would consider as like a success or not. I was like, yeah, I would have to do that math or work with someone on the analytics team to do that. And now it's just like I asked ChatGPT.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
I
insane.
before is like there's like some Survey Monkey calculator that I would always use
Oh, I didn't know.
because otherwise you have to there's like some spreadsheet that data analytics team has. So like I'd have to go like ask them for that spreadsheet. And yeah, now ChatGPT can do it. I think also like one thing that I feel like they don't get enough credit for is it makes a program to do the analysis. So it's not the
It's
GPT.
code. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're
Yeah,
right. You can see the actual code generated.
yeah. So it's not the GPT that's like that has the risk of hallucinating, which is what it was. I think when it first came out, it was like the GPT trying to do math, which it just cannot do. Now they actually write the program to do the analysis, so you can actually trust.
You can execute. You can see what code was executed. You can see if there was any issues there, um, and you can even like just run that yourself locally if you need to, right?
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, I use it day to day on things that I did not anticipate to use it with, and I don't use it for things that I thought I would use it for. I thought I would now just have ChatGPT help out with all strategy, all requirements, all planning. I still do all of that myself. I use GPT more for like insight gathering or analysis or uh, information, condensing information, just those side of activities that would have taken me a lot of time. But then they all end up serving me for me to be a sole owner of thinking through strategy, thinking through what to do next and how to like define the roadmap. So I still get to flex those chops, but instead of relying on long back and forth and like a lot of processes, I can sort of shortcut that with ChatGPT and really help fuel and give me the data I need to like make a pitch or think about a feature or uh, think about what to build next. The one other thing that I use it for, which I have had a blast, is however I get to a PRD, like whether it's with GPT, whether it's on my own, like once I have something, I throw it in and I say, okay, imagine you were the CEO, the founder, or whatever, my manager or my manager's manager, like imagine this was being presented to you, and you have to critique it and find the flaws and present counter arguments to this strategy or proposal. Basically, how would you tear this apart as the CEO? And then I just give it, and then there's sometimes it just comes back with such great insights and like, oh yeah, I should add this section. Oh, I should edit this messaging. Oh, I should change the way I'm presenting the context in section one so that section two flows better. And then I'm not gonna lie, there have been moments where I'm like, okay, you've gotten those insights. Now just make the edits.
Yep.
And then it's like, okay, if you were to now imagine you're me and you're the PM and you got this feedback, make the edits that you would to this document so that you can, you know, work towards the arguments that you posed. And yeah, I mean, sometimes it does a decent enough job where I don't even need to touch the PRD again after like doing it once.
Yeah. I think that's like the value of it is like it does the feedback, it does the writing, but I think at the end of the day, like you still need a product manager, right? Like you still need to have kind of the brain who's kind of putting all this together. And I think
Are we
that's
getting into the point where like the most asked question online, which is will AIs replace PM? I have some thoughts. I know you have some thoughts there.
yeah.
But
I
like
think
I'm very curious.
Well, I think basically everything you said is just it supercharges you, right? Like it allows you to do your job better, right? Like you now can condense even more things that maybe would be less accessible before, right? You can now condense like the user sentiment from the reviews. You can now condense like vast amounts of data. Now it can just output to you, and you can have it in a digestible format, which is just maybe not as accessible, or you need a big team to kind of support that before. So it just kind of supercharges your existing role. And I think that's, I mean, to PM and to almost every role, at least at present, the AI is just like a superpower, right? The people who are using it are able to do their jobs more effectively. They're able to do it faster and at even higher quality. I think that's kind of what it's coming down to. It's not necessarily going to replace a PM. It's going to supercharge a PM. It's not going to replace a designer. It's going to now make the designer faster. Now that instead of doing, a kind of grunt work of, implementing the UI, they can do more of the UX, more of the analysis part, and focus less on kind of the more boring parts of the job. So I think that's where the AI stuff, at least as a PM, like I'm not worried about it. I'm more excited about it because now everything that would, be like a 40-hour work week is now like a maybe 10-hour work week because a lot of this grunt work is just kind of AI'd away.
But then why would you need more PMs? And if you can do your work in 10 hours a week, but you have 40 hours a week, I don't need four other people. I can just make sure you work 40 hours a week. And in that sense, AI supercharged you, but it replaced the other four PMs.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the conundrum right now. Is like the people who are getting replaced are the ones who aren't embracing the AI. And at
Okay.
least in my experience, it's most folks still aren't really using it, not professionally at least. So like
Hmm.
I basically like I remember when it first like not first came out, but maybe a year after it came out, like when GPT-4 came out, like I went from like literally like 15 to 20 hours a week of just like coming up with growth tests and like writing emails and writing PRDs and writing all this stuff to maybe like 5 to 8 hours. Like it literally cut it in half. I mean, most of course, PM is just meetings and getting buy-in and all that stuff. But like the actual like requirements writing and template writing and all this kind of work, like it literally cut it in half. But then what am I going to do at that time, right? Like I'm already kind of most of my stuff is gated. So even though I have more available time, there's not necessarily a way for me to productively use it. If I was I guess if I then took on another PM's role, so say I was doing the job of two PMs, well now I'm gated by I still don't have enough time for all the meetings that we need to have. So it depends on the organization you're in. I think if you're in a startup, it probably just supercharges the single PM. I don't think a startup ever wants fewer PMs. I don't know if they would allocate their resources differently, but in big tech, just the amount of meetings you need, the amount of buy-in you need, it's the meeting time is still the largest kind of block of time that you have.
Okay, let me say one thing, which I don't think you will disagree with, but I and all these AI products and all this technology is at its worst today,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it's getting better. And yes, we say AI won't replace PMs. And I think, you know, okay, maybe not this year, maybe not the next year, maybe not like 4 or 5 years from now, right? Because yeah, you all the creative genius and all the wrangling and all of that still lives with the product. There's context problems to solve for. There is uh, just a lot of stuff that's happening. I think we both acknowledge that there is like this term that's out there, like there is a collapsing of uh, the stack, in the sense that PMs will be required to be more and more involved in more and more things because now they have AI to supercharge them. So there's a chance that you are now involved in other areas more. Also, given the current economic environment, right? Like there's like fewer PMs in each company, and so there's also much more like um, stronger need from PMs to do more things than just what they've traditionally been asked to do. I mean, 15 years from now, how can we not believe that AI will also solve meetings? Like I think about, and it keeps me up at night, right? I mean, yeah, like if I have my AI joins any meeting, my AI is talking to the legal team's AI, is talking to the designer team's AI, and they've like all action items, everything's solved for. Like I've solved for all the meeting conundrum also.
Uh, I guess most meetings are just like what buy-in or context, or and sometimes discussion, right? It's like maybe like three larger categories of meetings.
Okay.
So I mean, you need a decision,
Yeah.
you need to provide context, along with for a decision or for a larger discussion, and then there's also just kind of updates. Maybe those are like the three types of meetings. So
I mean,
how
AI will speak. I mean, dude, if you asked me 5 years ago, like will AI replace PMs? 5 years ago, my answer would have been there's no chance. Like, or how would you use AI as a day to day in a PM? My answer would be so different than literally 2021 when I walked in and I had ChatGPT for the first time, and now you ask me the question. It's so different. Like, no one in 2019 would have ever answered this question keeping in mind what we have now. Like my answer in 2019 to how PMs would look in 2024 is so different than how PM looks in 2024. So how can we even like, suggest that I can predict how it will be in 10 years?
well,
Again,
I guess maybe the difference with PM versus other roles is a PM is often not the decision maker, but maybe the what's like a I don't know, is it like the thinker? Like the PM is kind of like, okay, what are the problems? How do we solve that problem? Right. So if you have the AI,
orchestrate.
yeah, maybe like the director of like how to do this. And then the PM is then going and communicating up on like, hey, like we should probably do this because of this, and that. So is the AI going to bubble up those insights? LLMs, I don't think so. LLM, I think, is almost like a dead end that everyone is kind of going after in terms of like reasoning and that kind of stuff. Like obviously everyone's working, like a lot of folks are working on reasoning and like these other kind of other different types of models, but you're not really seeing them yet. So they haven't come out. So I think until the reasoning engines come out and those are super robust and they're as developed as LLMs are today, then I think PMs are safe. Maybe it comes out tomorrow and all this is moot, and then you just have a CEO who's just having all of this kind of stuff bubbled up to them
Yeah,
from the AI.
multiple Devons just running.
But I think like LLMs right now, they don't have the reasoning component. So it's going to be hard for them, at least in the foreseeable future, maybe ever, just because well, I don't want to say ever, but like I think LLM is kind of a dead end on this particular track. I think once there's reasoning, once it can basically identify the problems and then communicate it to some decision maker, then yeah, I think PM is going to help. But often the decision maker wants to delegate, right? Like the CEO wants to delegate it to somebody else to make these smaller decisions, so they're not just getting inundated with decisions all day long.
But that's also because they're doing so many things, so many other things, which if you have AI to do a lot of those things, the CEO doesn't need to worry about doing those things. So they can probably spend time on decision making.
But I think you still need context, right? Like if you're the decision maker, do you want to get context enough to make a good decision, or do you just want to like have a PM who's in charge of this specific area? AI is bubbling up the context for them. They're making the decision because they can retain the most context and stay the most up to date and still be that subject matter expert. Now, to your point, I don't think you're going to need as many PMs, right? You don't want to spread people too thin, but you're still going to have fewer than you have now. But you still need someone to make these decisions and to kind of have the context, have the kind of reasoning and strategic level of thinking to make these decisions. And I think that's what the PM is, and I think that's why the PM role is maybe safer than a lot of other roles. Because like once the PM makes a decision, the engineers go execute it, or the AI executes it.
Yeah.
It's kind of
I don't know. I keep I'm just gonna say this topic keeps me out at night. I keep thinking about it. My head, I'm like, okay, I probably want to pick up some hard skill like woodworking or like
I don't
like
know.
some like I don't know
I
like
guess but the thing is, like,
learn
out
how
of
to give haircuts. I'm never gonna let a AI cut my hair, so I won't.
did you see it?
I
Someone
don't.
actually just made it. It came out like a
What
month ago. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
haircut AI
Yeah, no, he's
haircuts?
using one of the robotic arms, and he was
Well,
using
I'm
scissors.
losing hair anyway, so I don't think I would need a barber. But you know, okay, not haircut then. So I don't know something, but
That's normally the response. Like whenever I talk to folks, they're always like PMs, especially. They're like, I don't think I'm gonna have a job in 5 years. I'm like, you're like the best position. Like as a PM, like this is our superpower. We already know our area, right? We know back end, we know design, we know whatever like our specific area is, marketing, whatever it is, right? You know that area. All you need is that someone to execute it at a high level, right? The AI can execute it at that level. You just have to have enough context in that area to make the decision for them and then direct it and guide it like you do an existing team.
so it's like, but what you're saying and the way I sort of interpret that is also kind of related to like how Sam Altman and everyone's talking about like you will see a lot more one person companies,
Mhm.
right? Like one person companies trying to make it like everyone's waiting for the next billion like unique one person unicorn with
Yeah.
all this AI stuff. And I think what you're suggesting is like there's a world in the future where it could be a one person, multiple one person teams, maybe not that level, but one person teams where maybe right now like the PM is the best position to be that one person in a team and have every other function execute according to what needs to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or I guess
I don't know at
maybe
that
that's
point.
it. Maybe it's not the PM, right? Like if you want someone to make technical decisions for the AI to go execute, it might not be a PM, right? But you're still going to want the strategic thing, the strategic mind to essentially orchestrate everything, and that might actually be the CEO or like the founder, who then has like a technical person, like an engineer or a designer, who is an SME in that area, and they're directing the AI. So I guess it depends on how everything kind of shakes out. In my head, it's a PM because I'm obviously like I'm biased, right? I think PMs are the best generalists that you can have the most context. But if the founder is a generalist, maybe they want an SME in each area. But then that might be case by case. I guess it depends on what the larger kind of industry
Okay,
takes
what
on.
if I pivot it this way and say, what if you get so good at your craft, individual craft, let's say design, like you are so good at design that you are always ahead of AI in the craft? Is that also a way to think about it? Like, what if, like, individually, I'm not talking about PMs and AI replacing PMs. At this point, I'm talking about, like, okay, I'm such a good, like, my design eye and my design sense is so good that AI, with all its infinite capability of coming up with designs, will never beat my creative genius or my creative sense as a designer. And what if that same operating principle and thinking principle is applied to different uh, areas in the cross functional team? I guess engineering is harder to see in that space because I think engineering is so logic driven and so constraint driven that I don't think you can beat the system. You can't be ahead of the system in that sense. Like it's all logic based. So if an AI can do it well, it will do it the most optimized well way. But
Yeah,
when you think about something creative like design, maybe there is a world where you can like be ahead of AI because you're always thinking creatively one step ahead.
I guess we're also kind of thinking at the cutting edge, right? Most companies are just they just need a feature to accomplish a specific objective,
Yeah, that's
right?
fair.
Like you have like the obviously the big tech companies, they have the creative team. So like,
Yeah.
every keynote they have a different design, they have a different kind of theme. But your average kind of smaller company is just trying to get by. They're just trying to survive. They're trying to find product market fit. They're just trying to service their customers. And then this is the vast majority of the market, or maybe like what, 50% of the economy is small business. So these are the guys who are going to be just, the AI is sufficient. It does the job. Like, even if you're the best designer, they don't need you, right? They just need like Canva equivalent, right? They just need it to say like, I need a website that can take online orders. That's it. And like, it makes it for them. So I think, yes, at the upper end, you're probably always going to have people, right? Because I think at least in the foreseeable future, like the best people will probably outperform the AI in these specific areas where they're subject matter experts. But maybe 99, 97% of the businesses don't need or can't justify that level of
Yeah.
expertise. And so the AI is going to be sufficient. And that's kind of like like the great equalizer in some sense.
Yeah.
Like the AI brings everybody up to a pretty good bottom, right? Like even like the
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I know what you mean.
yeah, I think my mom was telling me like she had some employee like he had a lot of typos in his emails. He was in charge of sending that company newsletter. It was like so bad, his quality issues. Like she was thinking of firing him. Then like she gave him a tutorial on like ChatGPT, and just like 20 minutes is like just put your emails in here, paste the output, it'll be fine. She promoted him like 2 times in the last 2 years. Like he's doing great. No more
Nice.
typos.
Okay.
Like the
But
AI does everything.
that's your like your supercharge story,
Exactly.
right? Like it's just
This is someone who like on a baseline level is not great, but because of the AI, like they can get up to a better baseline, right? So the previous baseline they would have gotten them fired. This new baseline is now sufficient that they're outperforming their peers who are not using them.
this makes me wonder if this is true, but it looks like kind of my thinking here is that in the near term, not maybe not too far off, or like not too near term, but in this like near to mid term, AI will give rise to a lot of mediocrity. Like you will see a lot of people reach the middle level. And so, as you said, right, like it'll pull the baseline up. So, a lot of people who are in the lower spectrum will sort of move to a mediocre or a middle standard. Like, there'll be a very, like, it'll be very interesting to see, like, to find the truly top 1% in that skill or in that craft, because you'll see a lot of people make it very easily into this like midsection.
But I would argue like if you, I guess I'm deep into like apps, and like if you look at a lot of like iOS apps specifically or even Android apps, right? They use Material Designer, they use like the base components. Right? So all of these apps are using the base components. A lot of not all, well, like a lot of apps are using the base components. They all kind of look pretty similar. So when you see someone that isn't using the base components, they're doing something that looks a little different. It looks a lot better. It's all custom. Then you like obviously they are kind of they know at least how to program. They at least know how to like make something that has
Yeah,
better
yeah,
UX,
yeah.
more
So,
custom.
but you'll see a lot more similar looking material design apps now. So you'll see a lot of people getting pulled up to that mediocre, like middle level. And then it's how you sort of like separate from that and how do you make yourself the 1% niche. And I'll give you this example, very similar to yours. What was I forget, 4th of July.
Yeah.
I got so many product emails on 4th of July, which, like their sales, right? And it was so funny. I could so easily see that someone was using an AI assistant to write those. Like they were all very similarly worded, similar theme, almost comical how similar the subject and the actual main tagline and the main context and caption and copy was in the primary email. And at that point, I was like, everyone's going to be able to do this. And there's going to be this top 1% creative genius that's going to be able to pull off a Thanksgiving email so differently that it's going to stand out. Um, and so it's going to be, that like, it might be easier to stand out, but, I just like trying to find words to say this, but you'll see a lot more people in that looking similar mediocre level,
Hmm.
and the fight's going to be for that 1%, like
Yep.
the top echelon.
Yeah. I guess we're in this kind of unique area right now where most folks don't realize that the AI is driving like most of the emails they're reading, most of the content, not most, but like a large percentage of the content that they're consuming. Like the AI has already gotten so good that most people would say don't realize that they're consuming AI content. They just think it's good or they just won't even notice. And so we're already at that kind of level. So now to your point, like the 1%, it's, I guess it's easier to stand out, but it's also maybe harder to find because that baseline is brought up so high. So for instance, if the AI knows how to like retain a user's attention for longer, right? Then the AI videos are going to be a larger percentage of your feed. So now you need a user who not only stands out from the AI content, they also know how to retain attention. So it gets, I think that maybe it's not 1%, maybe it's like 0.1% because the AI
Mhm.
is going to be better at a lot of these things than most people are. But it's not really the top 1%, it's the top 0.01 or top
Mhm.
0.1% that can
Yeah.
differentiate and beat the algorithm.
Okay. I know I mean, we can keep going on this topic. I mean, it's always fun catching up and just trying to do these. I hope we get to do more of these. I really do. But I mean, again, I had a great time and, you know, looking forward to more of these. Do you have any like not last, but do you have any like hot takes for product management? Like one hot take
Like on the AI in general, or
or just in general, like PM, like any product management hot takes?
I think at the higher levels, it's very, very political. Maybe it's not a hot take. Maybe it's just like a fact. But
You're saying most product management at one point becomes a political game.
yeah, I think so. Because a lot of times,
I think it's less about the product craft and more
yeah,
about the
I would
organizational.
argue it's less about how good you are at product management and more about how you are at managing stakeholders.
Okay, interesting.
A lot of like what will get you further is not being good at product or not being good at like kind of strategy. It's really just how do you manage the stakeholders and internal problem kind of.
Hmm. Okay, that's a interesting hot take. My hot take. A lot of product managers who aren't actively building the muscle to connect their work to the bottom line revenue will have a hard time like excelling or moving up or moving forward in their career. I think and the reason why I think it's a hot take is that you have a lot of PMs I've met kind of suggest that, oh, they do that with finance teams, they do that with analytics, they don't really have to do that because they're thinking more about like the product side of it, the customer side of it, the experience side of it, and like the pain points. But I think it's almost as important or even more to actually understand the business, the financial, the way your company is making money, and actually do the math to try and connect the dots to your work.
Yeah.
And you need to do that at whatever level you are. You cannot find an excuse to say, oh, I can't do this because my product is not as connected to the bottom line. Like, no, that is not an acceptable answer.
I think I don't know. I guess a lot of companies I think over index on that. So like they will axe like critical user journeys because the teams that are supporting those journeys are too expensive and they want to axe that team. But okay, great. Yeah, you just saved like $100 million. But now your customers are going to be unhappy and your retention's going down. So yeah, revenue is super important, but where you optimize for revenue is absolutely critical because I think right now we're in a time where people are optimizing for cost
Too much
savings,
for yeah.
but at the cost of the customer.
No,
It,
but that's where like the PM's at the best position where you solve for like you have to like there's no other one person in the company that's thinking about both of them.
yeah.
A lot of historically we've always been on the side of the customer side of it, right? And not the business side. Yes, there's a slight shift right now where it's more business side, but it is important. Like you will be part of a reduction in force if you can't
Oh yeah.
prove that the work you're doing is financially
Hmm.
supporting the business. And now yes, when you think about cost saving projects, that's where there's true product skills around make, how do you introduce cost savings, but without impacting or even improving the
Yeah,
customer experience. Like if you crack that nut, like, like I had a project in a similar line. It was one of the hardest, toughest moments as a PM was I had to deliver cost savings, but also manage the experience in such a way that our metrics didn't take a hit.
yeah. I think this is also part of the kind of, maybe it's more like a stock market thing, like the quarterly earnings, right? Everyone's optimizing for quarterly earnings, promotion timelines, all these kind of things. So at least what I was seeing is like a lot of folks are optimizing for short-term financial savings, but long-term like customer churn, which ultimately obviously is going to reduce your revenue numbers. But it's all about the short-term optimization, which then compounds. Like you're seeing this, like I think
But
that
I guess the point is different, right? I don't think I am suggesting that you optimize for one or the other,
yeah,
but you need to know how to do the math, or you need to know how what you do connects. And it's
yeah,
purely from a skill perspective. Like I don't think you can move forget moving up in your career. I don't think it is advisable, or you would want to think about being a PM without being able to associate your
mm,
work
the actual revenue that you're
with
bringing
actual
in.
revenue or with any dollar
Yeah,
metrics. I think that's one key thing is that
but yeah. I don't
you
know.
have to learn how to
I
connect
don't
it.
think that's a hot take. I think the hot
But
take.
I don't think people do. I don't think PMs are doing that. I don't think PMs
I guess
worry about
I
that.
think it depends on your position, right? Like I was conversion rate optimization. Win that I get pays for my salary like 1,000 times over. So like for me, it's like I'm in a very clear perspective or position where I can see like 10% conversion rate improvement pays for Alex for the next 100 years. Like, but I think a lot of PMs are not such a clear role.
But that's the point. Even if you're not, I think you need to put in the effort to try and connect the dot.
I guess if you're an internal, right, like internal tools, so
I
you
can
make like a
I
better bug tracker.
I still would push that individual to. It's going to be hard. I'm not saying it's going to be hard, and they'll have to make assumptions, and it will be a longer connect than a conversion rate PM. But you have to find a way to get as close as you can to a dollar value. You need to learn that skill. You need to build that skill, and because at someone in the chain is looking at that, is making a decision based on dollar impact, is making trade-offs there, and you want to be that person someday. And of course that person may not be connecting the dots clearly because, as you said, right, like an internal tool and a product doesn't have the clear lines, but there are assumptions that they make, there are models that they use, and as a PM working on that, you should also probably be thinking about it and knowing like how they would be thinking about that dollar value. Because I hate to say it, in the end, business is business. You will
Yeah,
have to think about both the dollar side and the customer
yeah.
side.
And if you can't make that, you can't connect those dots, then you probably know you're in a kind of risky position. So
Oh man, this has been fun. Hopefully, as I said, we get to do this soon, and you know, always fun chatting with you on product stuff.
yeah, good chat.
Good chat. See ya.